Have you ever watched a superstar's entire legacy teeter on the edge, right when they seem unstoppable? That's exactly what's happening with Drake. Shocking leaked messages, disturbing alliances, and jaw-dropping revelations are pouring in. It's as if the walls he built around his meticulously crafted reputation are finally crashing down, and the fallout might be colossal. For years, Drake was viewed as the sophisticated chart topper who could do no wrong, but recent discoveries suggest something far darker behind the curtain. Did Kendrick Lamar see all this coming before the rest of us? Could Not Like Us have been the ultimate clue about Drake's real motives? Buckle up, because today we're uncovering the unsettling evidence that's sending the hip-hop world into a frenzy. Let's dive in. For the longest time, Drake held a secure spot at the pinnacle of hip-hop, chart-topping hits, massive fan base, endless radio play. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar carved out his own lane, raw, introspective, and uncompromisingly honest. Where Drake courted commercial appeal, Kendrick thrived on gritty storytelling and introspection. Observers noticed this collision course, yet few believed it would become so personal. Things started simmering when Kendrick dropped subtle jabs, calling out the industry's tendency to reward superficiality over genuine artistry. Drake, always polished, responded with cunning lines sprinkled across various tracks. At first, it seemed like standard rap competitiveness, two juggernauts staking their claim, but then the tone shifted. Accusations of stealing moves and faking authenticity began to swirl, especially when hints emerged that Drake might be orchestrating behind-the-scenes campaigns to sabotage Kendrick's reputation. Suddenly, what felt like routine sparring morphed into a high-stakes confrontation. Kendrick's Not Like Us ignited conversation about Drake's allegedly deceptive tactics. Fans were torn. Was Drake truly capable of manipulating the rap ecosystem, or were these claims just strategic hype? At the time, many shrugged off the rumors, trusting Drake's smooth-talking public persona. After all, he'd never seemed the type to resort to dirty tactics, right? But that's precisely when we started seeing cracks. Whispers from insiders suggested Drake spent more time planning narratives than perfecting verses. Even loyal supporters couldn't ignore the rising tide of skepticism. Yet nobody predicted the tidal wave of revelations that would come crashing down once certain private conversations leaked. That's when everything changed, forever. Out of nowhere, a series of direct messages allegedly tied to Drake surfaced online. No elaborate press release, no grand confession, just raw, unfiltered conversations for the world to see. At first, fans were stunned. Could these messages really belong to the polite, polished artist they'd idolized? The content was so disconcerting that many assumed it was fake or manipulated. But as more credible sources weighed in, it became increasingly difficult to dismiss them as a hoax. In these DMs, Drake appeared deeply involved in orchestrating negative publicity against Kendrick. The language was coldly strategic, referencing how certain stories should be pushed or emphasized to tarnish Kendrick's image. He even named specific individuals who would benefit from these tall tales. The easygoing, vulnerable Drake who sang about personal heartbreak was absent in this discussion. Instead, we saw a calculating figure whose top priority seemed to be controlling the narrative, no matter the consequences. What really rattled people was the mention of outright fabrications. Drake appeared to acknowledge that he had no concrete evidence for some of his public accusations, but insisted that the rumors had to keep circulating. This turned the entire Drake versus Kendrick saga upside down. Suddenly, those lines Kendrick delivered in Not Like Us sounded less like competitive trash talk and more like a stark truth bomb. Listeners began revisiting Kendrick's bars, dissecting every lyric that hinted at hypocrisy or staged deception. Was he simply handing us the keys to understanding Drake's real modus operandi? Among these leaked messages, one particular exchange stood out, a bizarre moment that seemed to reveal Drake mocking or trivializing a deeply unsettling situation. This snippet would soon become the most talked about element of the entire scandal, driving home just how differently Drake appears to act behind the scenes. To comprehend the magnitude of these messages, remember, Drake isn't just a rapper, he's an international brand. Every word he utters, every endorsement he accepts, and every social media post he likes can sway masses of people and shift cultural trends. Learning that he might have been orchestrating smear campaigns behind closed doors was jarring. Even fans who had stood by him through previous controversies began to question whether they'd been deceived all along. The leaked chats painted an image of Drake as a puppet master, carefully pulling strings that reached far into the online hip-hop community. He engaged with bloggers, influencers, and digital platforms, nudging them to spin events a certain way. While a few fans tried to rationalize his actions, arguing it was just part of the music business, most couldn't ignore the stark cynicism. This wasn't simply defending inserting oneself in a rap beef. It looked more like a full-blown operation to rewrite reality. Worse yet, Drake openly bashed Kendrick, claiming he had cheated by tapping powerful allies to boost his popularity. Ironically, these messages revealed Drake was doing the same exact thing, cozying up to insiders who could smear Kendrick's reputation. Hypocrisy doesn't sit well with the hip-hop crowd, especially when the community places such a premium on authenticity, and that's where the betrayal really hit home. For Kendrick supporters, the leaks were a vindication of everything Not Like Us warned about. They pointed to the lines that exposed Drake's alleged reliance on spin and deception. Kendrick's depiction of Drake as an artist obsessed with optics rather than art now rang painfully true. And for Drake's loyalists, these revelations delivered a gut punch. Was their idol nothing more than a master manipulator using illusions to maintain his throne? Perhaps the most unsettling detail from all the leaks was Drake's casual mention of a bizarre encounter, one that clearly disturbed others in the conversation. It involved two people who, by all standards, should never have crossed paths like this. Yet Drake brushed off the entire scenario with a carefree LOL. The reaction was so off-putting that readers couldn't help but freeze in disbelief. After all, Drake built his brand on emotional depth and empathy. How could he find humor in a situation that most would find deeply distressing? Fans scrambled to figure out the context, but the messages offered few clues. Was it a party gone wrong? An unexpected run-in at some after-hours event? Nobody knew for sure, but the tone spoke volumes. It seemed that Drake, in private, found something comedic in a moment that appeared to involve personal or moral boundaries being crossed. In an age where fans crave relatable, big-hearted celebrities, seeing Drake respond this way felt like a betrayal. The sensitive crooner who poured his heart out in songs like Marvin's Room suddenly seemed numb to potentially serious implications. Supporters tried to salvage his image, claiming the texts were misunderstood or taken out of context. Some even suggested that Drake was referencing a different scenario entirely. But the brutal truth remained. The messages displayed a cold indifference. This single LOL instantly became a rallying point for doubters who insisted Drake's soft side was just another mask. The moment hammered home one pressing question. If Drake is so untroubled in private, what else has he dismissed with a shrug and a laugh? Once the leaks spread, the hip-hop community reacted with a mix of shock and outrage. Labels, producers, and other rappers quickly took note, questioning whether they should continue associating with an artist who seemed willing to twist truths to remain on top. While Drake had navigated controversies before, like ghostwriting allegations, this situation felt like an escalation. It wasn't just about questionable lyrics or petty feuds. It was about targeted manipulation that could reshape public perceptions. Industry insiders started whispering that Drake's label was panicking behind the scenes. They feared ongoing exposure of such messages might permanently stain Drake's marketability. As fans demanded transparency, executives weighed their options. Would they double down and defend Drake at all costs, or quietly pivot away if the public sentiment turned hostile? Historically, labels have shown time and again that once an artist becomes a liability, they don't hesitate to cut ties or reduce promotional support. The narrative also transformed among casual listeners. Up until now, many shrugged off rumors as typical rap beef sensationalism. But seeing Drake himself, in plain text, apparently orchestrating smears forced a drastic shift in perspective. People re-listened to songs where Drake declared himself real and authentic, trying to square those claims with the cunning figure in the messages. Some fans felt betrayed, especially those who had used Drake's music as an emotional anchor. Meanwhile, Kendrick's reputation soared. Listeners circled back to Not Like Us, praising how Kendrick had pinpointed the exact manipulative behavior that was now being brought to light. Suddenly, the track felt like a prophecy, and Kendrick's role as hip-hop's truth-teller grew even stronger. The more Drake tried to maintain control, the more the public gravitated to Kendrick's fearless honesty. Drake has dodged controversies in the past, from high-profile feuds to accusations about his songwriting process. But this wave of revelations cuts deeper, threatening the core trust he's long enjoyed. In an era where authenticity reigns supreme, losing that trust can be a fatal blow. No matter how skillfully Drake raps or croons, if fans perceive him as a manipulative figure orchestrating narratives for personal gain, they may never look at him the same way again. The leaked messages also hinted at deeper issues. If Drake could be so dismissive in this instance, what else might be lurking in his past or present interactions? Speculation exploded on social media, with individuals digging for any evidence of prior manipulations. Longtime collaborators dodged questions or issued cryptic responses. People who'd once praised Drake's genuine heart openly wondered if they'd been hoodwinked by a master illusionist. Worse still, talk began circulating that Drake's label might distance itself if the scandal grew larger. While no official statements emerged, insiders claimed the label had serious discussions about damage control. When your top star is accused of orchestrating full-blown smear campaigns, you worry about brand reputation. If these associations threaten major endorsement deals or event partnerships, a label's next step is often to pivot toward artists with cleaner reputations. All the while, Kendrick stood poised as the anti-Drake, someone who'd consistently delivered cutting social commentary without sugarcoating the truth. Whether or not Kendrick actively fueled the conversation, the public recognized that his perspective hadn't just been another rap boast, it was an unfiltered critique of the industry's biggest name. Now, it seemed every lyric was validated in real time. With each new piece of evidence confirming Drake's behind-the-scenes maneuvering, Kendrick's star power rose. Fans dissected Not Like Us line by line, labeling it a courageous expose rather than a petty diss. They argued Kendrick was calling out the corporate underbelly of hip-hop, the deals, the backroom bargains, the orchestrated images. Indeed, Drake looked increasingly like an embodiment of everything Kendrick cautioned against. This didn't just boost Kendrick's fan base, it also elevated his credibility as an artist who practices what he preaches. Every time a new Drake message surfaced, showing more deception or self-preservation at all costs, listeners revisited Kendrick's discography, hunting for further insights into how the industry truly operates. Kendrick transformed from a single rapper waging war on a giant into a figure who challenged systemic illusions within mainstream music. Meanwhile, Drake's struggle intensified, social media filled with memes mocking his attempts to LOL his way through morally questionable moments. Hashtags calling out his alleged hypocrisy trended worldwide. Even media outlets that once championed Drake's every release began to question his moral compass. That sense of unbreakable momentum he once flaunted was rapidly evaporating. Will Drake stage a comeback? Possibly. The music industry loves a redemption arc, but for that to happen, he'd need to own his mistakes and confront the accusations head-on, something the leaks suggest he's not naturally inclined to do. As cynicism around his actions grows, so does the sense that his empire might never recover its former shine. Add to that the unwavering spotlight on Kendrick's unwavering honesty, and you get a situation where public sympathy is leaning heavily in Kendrick's favor. So here we are, witnessing a seismic shift in hip-hop's power balance. Drake, once the undisputed giant, stands on shaky ground as shocking evidence strips away layers of his public persona. The leaked messages unveiled a master manipulator, someone who might have shaped entire narratives to discredit rivals. And at the heart of it all, Kendrick Lamar emerges as the force who saw through the illusions and sounded the alarm. Is this the final act of Drake's storied career? Or just a stumbling block on his path to an eventual rebound? That's the question gripping fans and critics alike. One thing is unmistakably clear. These revelations haven't just tarnished Drake's image, they've upended the faith many placed in him. In their eyes, he's no longer the relatable figure who wore his heart on his sleeve. Instead, he's the artist who might have laughed off serious scenarios, spun tales for personal gain, and waged a covert war against a fellow rapper whose only real weapon was uncompromising truth. For those who've doubted Drake's sincerity, the leaked conversations stand as a resounding confirmation. For die-hard fans, it's a gut-wrenching test of loyalty. And for Kendrick Lamar, it's a triumph that stretches beyond mere rap beef, one that cements his reputation as an authentic voice unafraid to call out hypocrisy, no matter how colossal his rival's empire might be. The hip-hop landscape may never be the same, and we're all left wondering if this is just the beginning of an even bigger reckoning in the industry. Stay tuned.